G'day there guys, how's it going? Markee here, back again with another episode of r/LegalAdvice. Now with that said, I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the bloody good content, and don't get arrested in the process. Posted by user Ortius, titled, "My employer refuses to recognize my legal marriage, citing it's their policy." This has been going on for about 2 months now since I began working at this company. My husband and I married last November and filed a common law marriage affidavit with the state of Texas. Many states do not recognize common law marriage, but Texas does. My marriage has the same legal status as a traditional marriage. If I wanted to leave my husband, I would have to get a legal divorce. We filed married on our taxes last year with the federal government. I provided my affidavit and tax return to prove my marital status to my employer for spousal insurance benefits, and they say they do not recognize common law marriages. I have explained and shown them numerous times that, while the company's HQ is in a state that doesn't recognize common law marriage, Texas, where I live and work, does recognize it, as being on the same level as traditional marriage. They have offered for my husband and I to sign a domestic partnership form to get benefits, but on the form it says, "By signing this document, I affirm that I am not legally married to anyone." I can't sign it because that would be a lie, so it's a bit of a catch-22. I've brought this up with them, and they have agreed that by me signing that document, it wouldn't be truthful, but they don't know what I should do. I really don't want to sign that document and then be put in a bad spot legally down the road because it's misrepresenting my marital status. My husband is furious with them, citing that it's discriminatory to consider our marriage lesser than a traditional marriage, even though it has the same legal grounds. My previous employer accepted my marriage immediately without question when I provided the same documents. Do we actually have any legal grounds to stand on here? Any insights on this is greatly appreciated. When did you register your marriage? It seems like ever since 2011, the county clerk office has been providing actual marriage certificates for informal marriages, the Texas term for common law marriages, just like they do for traditional marriages. It just costs half of what a traditional certificate costs. Does your affidavit look like this? Unfortunately, I don't think I'm allowed to show Texas legal documents. You guys can look that up if you'd like. Maybe try and get a certificate from your county clerk that looks more legitimate. Should only cost $31. Yeah, that's exactly what we did. They gave us the affidavit that has a pressed seal on it. That's what Austin sent us. They won't accept that, unfortunately. Did they say why? It's our policy to not accept common law marriages, they said. The person I spoke to had the audacity to say my marriage wasn't legal. They regretted saying that because they got an earful. You don't need to sign every document presented to you as is or not at all. Ask if you can amend it. By signing this document, I affirm that I am not legally married to anyone, except by common law marriage, Or, by signing this document, I affirm that I am legally married to XXX in accordance with all laws of the state of Texas. No reason to dance around it and admit any merit to their position that common law differs from civil marriage. If they can't file the form with a truthful statement on it, then they need to re-examine the situation with their legal department. Great idea. I'll bring that up with management and HR. I might just add my own addendum if I send that form with additional details describing the situation just to say I did my due diligence. I still don't think it's right to have to jump through all these hoops, however. Just a quick heads up, if you're making an addendum in pen to an already printed document, you really need to have the other party initial or sign near the penned addendum to indicate that they've seen and acknowledged the change. That said, it's always best to rewrite the document and print/sign rather than make an addendum in pen. Good luck. Be careful. If your employer contributes anything towards your husband's benefits, that becomes taxable to you with a domestic partnership form, unlike a marriage where you do not pay income tax on their contribution. Honestly, if you're married, which you are, the quickest way to resolve this might be to go down to the courthouse and do a civil wedding. It's a pain, yes, but it does solve this issue. Otherwise, have an attorney write a letter explaining to them that in Texas, you are considered legally married, as well as in the eyes of the IRS and federal government, So either they can fix it, or you can pursue this with them legally. But in this case, since you are married, maybe this isn't the battle you're wanting to fight, and paying the $75 or so to the courthouse is worth making the problem go away. Another comment by Tifa Says Whoa says, I always thought that when employed by a company with several sites, the labor laws that apply to you are based on your work state. Not a lawyer, so this may be inaccurate, but I would look into how insurance policies can be dictated based on work state. May I ask why yours is a common law marriage instead of traditional? Interested in the benefits of going that route? Yes, that's what I thought and still believe, as well regarding labor laws. I really do think they don't have the authority to tell me my marriage isn't legal. We went the common law route mostly because it's a lot easier. You go to the county clerk and fill out a form, they file it with the state, and then you get a certificate in the mail. It doesn't look like the traditional marriage license, it's just a normal piece of paper with a gold seal on it. It was half the price of getting a regular traditional marriage license. The biggest thing for us was not having to have a ceremony. I have always hated the hoopla regarding weddings in general, just too much fuss and money. At the time we got married, we had already been dating for longer than most people are married anyways, so it was an easy shift. We do plan to have a small, very casual ceremony with maybe 5 to 10 people present, but definitely no wedding dress. Someday, but at the time it really made sense to start taking advantage of tax breaks by being married. Plus, being able to share benefits. We aren't religious, so for us it was more of a legal status change than a momentous spiritual event. Of course, in theory, it was supposed to be easy and our marriage is on the same level as a traditional marriage, but I find that often I have to explain my marriage because a lot of people have misconceptions about common law and what it means. It doesn't help that I didn't change my last name either. My husband and I did a similar thing, except we did get a traditional marriage license. It was actually for the same reason that you're having difficulty, work benefits in the same state, Texas. We just moseyed down to the courthouse, paid for the license, and scheduled a time slot with the JP that fell after the waiting period. JP said some words, signed the license, and we had it back with the seal on the very next day. Took maybe 4 days total. We didn't bother telling anyone or making a big deal of it, and I kept my last name. Honestly, it was pretty easy. I know you might want to stick with common law and principle, but it would probably save yourselves a lot of annoyance both now and in the future if you just pull the trigger on a standard license. I will say in retrospect that lately I'm half wishing I did change my name, because I often get the side eye when trying to do stuff like talk to our insurance carrier that's in my husband's name. Now I'm in a creative field where it's tied to my profession, so I'm stuck with it. Update. My employer refuses to acknowledge my marriage, citing it's their policy. Well, 4 months of numerous emails, phone calls, and escalations, and they finally decided to acknowledge my marriage. It took me contacting a lawyer and threatening legal action before they contacted their own legal team, and I assume went, whoops, this could be a lawsuit. Then we magically got a voicemail that said, we confirmed your husband, no explanation for the change of heart. I want to thank everyone who helped me on the previous post and brought to my attention that spousal benefits are tax-free while domestic partnership benefits are not. Everyone in the HR department knows my name now, probably, so hopefully we won't have a problem this large in the future. Posted by user Rebel Nature, titled, Neighbor keeps flying drone above privacy fence, recording us during privacy moments, ... I'm trying to figure out what the laws are in Texas for drones in neighborhoods. Not long ago, I was sick and went out into my backyard with my husband to get some fresh air. He went back inside and went to the bathroom. Due to being unwell, I suddenly needed the bathroom, we have two, and went to rush inside. But my husband had locked the door out of habit and couldn't hear me banging on the door. Someone must have heard, because suddenly I heard a drone approaching. This camera-equipped drone flew over our fence and had the camera pointed at me for a good 5+ minutes while I desperately knocked on the door, doubled over, trying to get my husband's attention. It was pretty embarrassing, and I'm sure whichever neighbor owns it got a kick out of it, and who knows if they showed the video to anyone else. Since then, there have been numerous times when my husband has got out for an early morning cigarette while wearing nothing but his underpants, only for the drone to fly up and stay pointed at him until he comes back inside. I'm agoraphobic and don't leave my house unless I'm with my husband. I bought a washing line just to give myself an excuse to get outside more because I'm otherwise cooped up inside 24 hours a day, 5+ days a week. I've now stopped going out in my own yard for more than a couple minutes in case the drone comes out to record me. We have a 6-foot privacy fence just so I could feel comfortable in my backyard, but that doesn't help with a drone. If this drone were to get knocked down by my husband while above my property, forcing the pilot to come and retrieve it, what is the liability here? I also don't know if it's worth mentioning, but we have a local Air Force base. We're probably around 15 miles away from it, but our house is directly below the flight path and we have military planes fly over very closely on a daily basis. Is this drone being flown in proximity to the flight path of any significance in aviation law aspect? The Grey Cloud says, this might be a little useful regarding some of the issues to consider. agrilaw.life/Texas Ag Law/2016. So they haven't updated it in 4 years. Okay. The restatement opines that flights over 500 foot are likely not within the immediate reaches, while flights of less than 50 foot are likely within the immediate reaches such that a trespass action could succeed. Intrusion on seclusion is a cause of action requiring proof of the following elements. 1. Intentional intrusion. 2. Upon the solitude or private affairs of another. 3. Which is highly offensive to a reasonable person. And 4. Which is justifiable, unreasonable, or unwarranted. It is conceivable that under the right circumstances, a drone flying over one's property could potentially meet these elements if it was capturing images of a highly offensive nature. This is helpful, thanks. Next time we see it, we'll record it as proof that it is capturing images of us and invading our privacy. I don't know if I'd be as diplomatic in this regard, but that's just me, and the problem's never going to affect me, probably. Squiggle the Cow says, is it possible for you to get a security camera, like the Nest camera, that would cover your backyard and capture this happening? I suspect that hard evidence like video would help you bolster your case if this does become a criminal issue. Be sure to check your local laws for what signage you need to put in the area, if any, to make sure the footage is admissible. We had been looking into getting a security camera because of break-ins in the neighborhood, but decided to just start looking to move instead. May end up just getting cameras anyway at this point. Not a lawyer, but I am a Part 107 certified drone pilot living in Texas. With a few exceptions of no-fly zones, he can fly over your property without your permission. The FAA has just changed its rules on hobby drone pilots and requires them to take a knowledge test and get permission to fly in controlled airspace. However, controlled airspace doesn't always extend to the surface, even if your house is under the flight path. They can still fly over your property. The invasion of privacy is another matter, and I'll leave that to the lawyers. Are the owners of small civilian drones required to have them registered now? And if so, are they required to have the registration number visible on the drone? Yes, they are required to register drones over half a pound with the FAA and mark it with the issued number. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't flyby camera illegal for non-licensed pilots? Also Part 107 holder/manned pilot here. There's new legislation in place that says drone pilots have to take a knowledge test even if they're just hobbyists, but there's not much enforcement right now. It has to be within visual line of sight, which it likely is if he's a neighbor. Your husband would likely be guilty of something like unlawful discharge and would be financially liable to the owner for an often surprisingly large amount. From your description, it's not at all clear a law is being broken. Certainly you can report to local police or the FAA to be sure. Wouldn't this classify as voyeurism? Flying a drone over a privacy fence and recording their neighbors is a clear violation of privacy. I am not a lawyer. Texas Penal Code 21.17 suggests, yes, with respect to voyeurism, OP should file a report with the police. A A person commits an offense if the person, with the intent to arouse or gratify their sexual desire of the actor, observes another person without the other person's consent, while the other person is in a dwelling or structure in which the other person has a reasonable expectation of privacy. Incidentally, there's also some case law here that seems possibly applicable, since Kentucky laws surrounding voyeurism are similar. Not sure how well precedents work across state lines though. Not able to find the case from mobile, but the Kentucky case is mentioned in this New York Times article. A man suspecting a drone on his property to be spying on his minor daughter by the pool shot the drone down. According to the Mirror, he was arrested and charged with first-degree criminal mischief and first-degree wanton endangerment. The case was dismissed when the judge decided he had the right to shoot it down. Ooh, spicy. Your husband would likely be guilty of something like unlawful discharge. I assume that means if he were to shoot it down, but I meant more along the lines of if he knocked it down with a broom or something, rather than shooting it down and forcing whoever is flying it to have to come and retrieve it. Are you saying that the drone is only 10 feet or so above the ground? It moves around, usually 16 to 20 feet above ground, sometimes higher, sometimes lower. If my husband were to stand on something with a broom in his hand, he could probably knock it down. No, he can't knock it down, damage it, or take possession of it. Check your local laws for how low or high drones are allowed to fly. In regards to it getting taken out by the husband, your husband would be on the hook for the value of the drone and maybe whatever criminal charges for property destruction. Two wrongs don't make a right. He cannot destroy someone's property because he doesn't like what the property is doing or whether that property is violating the law. Best bet is to start capturing video of the drone in/over your backyard and call the police when it's violating your privacy. I was a bit too vague, but clarified in another comment that I was referring more to knocking the drone down and taking it inside, in which case, whoever is flying would have to come and get it back. I assume that may fall into the category of property theft though. Good idea on recording it when it is over our backyard. We'll start doing that. Correct, he cannot steal the drone either. So does the person flying the drone have the legal right to fly it as close to our house as they like, as long as they're not physically touching our property? Not really, especially if they're taking video. Privacy laws still apply to the use of drones, and people cannot use drones to video or view things where people would have an expectation of privacy. So for example, if you were naked in your house and someone could just peep in your window by standing out at the street, that's not an invasion of privacy. So a drone doing the same thing from the same point of view would likely not either. But if you're upstairs, where no one can reasonably see you from a public vantage point, and someone uses a drone to look in your window, that would violate whatever their privacy laws are. Unless a person could see into your backyard from a public vantage point, it would likely be a violation of your privacy for someone to use a drone to create such a vantage point and video you. This is what I kept reading when looking up the laws, but it seemed contradicted by other parts saying that the airspace above property isn't owned, and that being outdoors diminishes expectations of privacy to some extent. Our house is a single-story building with a 6-foot privacy fence. Our back door is actually on the side of that house. The deck outside our back door is raised, but is sandwiched between our house and the neighbors, so it isn't visible to anybody unless they're extremely tall and intentionally looking into our backyard / down the side of our house. When the drone is flying over, it has a clear view right into our bedroom windows too. So we've now hung curtains on top of the blinds that were already there. Edit. Definitely didn't expect this post to get this much attention. I've woken up to dozens of messages. A lot saying the same thing, such as, buy your own drone and follow it / crash it into theirs and learn how to hack and disable it, as well as some other very illegal suggestions. I'm just going to film it next time it's filming one of us, then contact the sheriff's department. Boring, I know. If that doesn't help, I'll consider some of the other suggestions. The more legal ones, that is. Thanks. And shout out to the person who decided to message me their bitterness, talking about how inspiring it is to meet a woman that lives off their husband. Seriously, what is it with Redditors that have to attack people that want help? It's like half the posts I see, someone goes and attacks them for having a problem. Jesus Christ. This is the kind of attitude that stops people from asking for help. I know that was long, but I have no clue about drone law, I'm sorry. And now, neighbor threatening to sue us for cutting down our own tree. Ohio. This January, we had a giant oak tree cut down in our backyard. Prior to this happening, we informed our neighbors as we had to have lots of trucks and a crane blocking the street and my driveway for short periods of time during the day they cut it down. No one said anything or seemed to really care. The tree was a huge hazard. All winter, we had been experiencing small limbs falling, and we were starting to get concerned for one falling onto our house. We did have the tree trimmed every other year, but one big limb finally fell on our patio after an ice storm, crushing our furniture and the patio awning. As soon as the weather allowed, we had the entire tree cut down. We discovered that the tree was actually very unhealthy. Most of the inside was decayed and there was a giant crack down the center of the base. Seriously, a ticking time bomb. This definitely saved our house as well as our neighbors' homes. Fast forward to the summertime, as our yards are coming into bloom and the heat is rising our AC bills. We did notice our electric bill was a little higher as we no longer have the usual shade of the tree. A small price to pay for our safety. Our next door neighbors have essentially a botanical garden in their backyard. They are retired and spend a lot of time working on their yard and landscaping. The tree branches had previously reached a bit over into their property, but more significantly, provided a lot of shade over the house and yard. Apparently, now that their yard has gone from partial sun to full sun, a large amount of their flowers and shrubs were unable to thrive as usual. Their electric bill is also affected. Mr. approached us a few times over the summer to tell us how selfish and rude we were to not consider how this would affect their yard now that there is significantly more sun. Their house is also featured on our township's garden club annual tour, and they decided they could not participate this year due to these significant losses. Another neighbor, a much more reasonable one, said that he had approached them and asked if they would be interested in teaming up to sue for the costs of lost landscaping and electric bills due to us cutting down the tree. He said no, and then told us, just in case they decide to actually sue us. I realize this sounds completely insane. I can guarantee that the entire base and roots of the tree were on our property, no question. It was smack in the center of our yard. All that touched their property was the afternoon shade the tree provided and a few feet of branches. We did inform them of this happening right at the beginning. I don't believe this is our fault, that we prefer to spare our house and lives over their landscaping. In fact, we probably spared their own home by cutting this tree down. If it fell in their direction, it would have definitely hit their house too. Is there any possible leg for them to stand on? Sorry, but those people are insane. You have no liability here. If they sue, they will lose. Ethically, they should not even be able to pay a lawyer to take this frivolous case, but they could try small claims. You did nothing wrong and should only respond if you get a letter from a court or a summons. Save any pictures you have showing how bad the tree was. I would also ask the tree trimmer to write you a statement of the condition of the tree on their letterhead. Please. They knew in January the tree was removed, and they could have put something in place to provide shade to their precious garden. You weren't being selfish. You were being proactive and doing exactly what you're supposed to do in this situation. You had reasonable belief that the tree was dead or dying, and therefore had an obligation to prevent further property damage or loss of life. Ignore them, and don't talk to them in person anymore. Lots of people threaten to sue, and then either never bother finding an attorney, or they'll go to talk to attorneys to learn that they don't have a case. If they actually have you served, you should see an attorney. Just in case, if you have pictures of the state of the tree when it was cut down, save those in a few places, including cloud storage. If you have an arborist report or a report from the company that removed the tree saying it was decayed, save those too. Alternate scenario. If you didn't cut the tree down, the weather turns windy, icy, whatever, limbs and or whole tree fell, somehow damaging the neighbor's garden/property in the process. Now the neighbor is looking to sue you for negligence and property damage, which would be much more likely to hold weight in court. If the neighbors have known since January, they've had time to come up with alternate plans, installing shade structures, looking into more hardy plants, etc. Right now, their complaint boils down to, my neighbor responsibly hired professional arborists to safely cut down their own rotted tree on their own property, and gave us notice of their plans, even though they aren't legally required to. We've been benefiting from their tree for years, without ever having to pay any costs associated with it. Tree trimming, watering, raking, etc. And we would rather they risk their lives and keep a dangerously decayed tree than lose shade for our plants. I sympathize with the unexpected rise in energy bills and the unexpected impact on what was probably a beautifully groomed garden, but if that's their attitude, they can suck rocks and pound sand. Growling at the world, aren't we all, says, since the tree was in a bad shape and posed a danger, I can't see any argument for you keeping the tree so the neighbors could have shade. My neighbors cut down their large oak as it was hollow inside and was a threat to their house. The township had no issue with a permit being granted for its removal. Edit. Wow, this blew up way more than anticipated. To answer the most asked questions, the tree removal company did acquire the township permits prior to removing the tree. We do not have to replace the tree. There are several other trees further back on our property. We aren't really friendly with these neighbors. They are always looking to complain about everyone. A dog barks too loud, not cutting the grass often enough, another neighbor had their driveway repaved that was not to their liking. Once we had a party with about a dozen people, and they called the cops because we parked on the street in front of their house. 100% legal street parking. Everything anyone does makes their life more unpleasant. We will just continue our lives, and if we are served, we will respond. I did call the tree company just to confirm any documentation they have for cutting down the tree, and they still have it, and said they were more than willing to assist us if there was a problem. Thanks, everyone. And I hope you enjoyed that one. I wouldn't know what else to do in that situation besides what they did. That's all for me today with legal advice. I'm going to chuck you to outro Markee. Hope he treats you better than story Markee did. G'day there guys, outro Markee here. Hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed making it today. If you did, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. Tell me what you thought about it down below. Also, if you like memes, be sure to head on over to my second channel, Markee 2. It should be one of the sexy Australian faces on screen, the one without the flag. It's my latest and greatest creation, and I hope you like it. Also, I'd like to give a huge shout out to my channel members and Patreon subscribers. You guys do so much good for me, and the support goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I love you guys, and I appreciate all the help and support you provide me on this channel. Also, if you want to join the family, links are down in the description below, or click that join button next to the subscribe button. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed that one today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!